Breaking news. A corrupt local admin illegally confiscates a miner's ultra-rare pet, only to get spectacularly launched into a massive authoritative system failure. Welcome back to Kokugo Taiwa. I am MC, your cheerful host. Today we are covering Yuzo Otsuka's classic literature, Suho's White Horse. And to celebrate, look at this beautiful tribute art I drew. I used these thick, erratic red crayon strokes to symbolize their unbreakable bond. And this wildly swirling background, that is the storm of their pure, passionate friendship. Ha!
Kapur, MC Shi. The fan communities will completely lose their minds over this. Your supposedly wholesome artistic choices are actually a terrifyingly accurate prophecy of the actual plot.
Wait a minute. What do you mean by prophecy? This is just a happy, energetic picture of a boy and his favorite pet.
That thick red line of yours perfectly foreshadows the massive system-wide damage the horse takes from a relentless rain of projectiles. And that swirling storm, it is clearly the abyss of despair right before a highly dramatic forced server logout. This is a truly supreme piece of dark canon world building.
Eek! What in the world? Are you looking into a psychopath's mindscape right now? That is absolute nightmare fuel. Stop ruining my pure masterpiece and let us just start the show already. All right, it is time to jump straight into the investigation phase. I will be guiding us through the actual timeline of Suho and his magnificent white horse. Everyone, get ready for an incredibly emotional journey.
Prepare your tear ducts, everyone. But remember, beneath the surface of this seemingly wholesome folktale lies a terrifyingly deep rabbit hole of system exploitation and unequal power dynamics. The theorists will absolutely feast on this narrative.
Right, so our protagonist is Suho, a very poor but hardworking shepherd boy. One evening, he finds a struggling, tiny white foal on the ground and decides to pour all his love and meager resources into raising it to full health.
Ah, yes. In modern digital terms, Suho is essentially a zero-stat NPC who somehow rolls an ultra-rare companion in a completely random open-world encounter. He aggressively invests all his limited daily login rewards into maxing out this one top-tier unit to heavily boost his social standing.
Excuse me? He loved that horse like his own family, okay? Anyway, a massive event happens when the local ruler, the governor, announces a huge horse race. The winner gets to marry his daughter, and Suho's friends convince him to enter.
Kopo! This is literally a VIP server matchmaking event. Our low-tier protagonist sneaks into a high-society networking party, using his max-level, highly photogenic mount to completely bypass the algorithm and secure a top-tier marriage match. It is the ultimate profile fabrication.
Wait, what? That is a completely deranged way to look at it. But sadly, the governor finds out Suho is poor and instantly cancels the marriage promise. He tries to forcefully buy the horse for a measly 3 silver coins, and when Suho refuses, his guards beat him up and steal the horse anyway.
A total skill issue on Suho's part. The server admin applied a retroactive income filter, flagged Suho for a massive terms of service violation, and confiscated his premium asset. He should have just accepted the 3 silver coins as a consolation prize and logged out quietly.
Are you kidding me? I am sorry, but as a functioning adult, 3 silver coins is infinitely better than absolutely 0. Why on earth would you try to negotiate with an absolute dictator when you have 0 leverage? You just got your physical HP crushed, lost your only asset, and got thrown out on the street? That is the worst return on investment imaginable.
Gee, your realistic financial audits are way more terrifying than any corrupt system admin. Please spare my eardrums, MC Shi. I'm surrendering.
I am just stating the cold, hard facts. Anyway, during a huge banquet, the governor tries to ride the white horse to show off, but the horse violently bucks him off and immediately sprints away to return to Suho before completely breaking down.
The esports caster in me is screaming. The premium mount violently rejects the pay-to-win player's command inputs in front of the entire server. It is making a mad dash back to its original coordinates, but the furious admin immediately issues a mass delete command.
Yes, the governor orders his men to shoot. The poor horse is hit by countless arrows, taking massive, irreversible system damage, but it still manages to drag itself all the way back home to Suho before completely breaking down.
For a moment, even the noise stopped. It was just a cold, lonely reality of a broken bond. But wait, even as its HP hits absolute zero and faces a forced logout, the horse dives into Suho's offline dream network. It tells him to use its leftover parts to craft a musical instrument, establishing a permanent, undeletable connection.
I am sorry, but no! That is a massive hygiene and biohazard violation. Do you have any idea how hard it is for an amateur to properly treat raw materials like that? It's going to smell terrible and ruin the entire house. This is exactly like the time you left your homemade fruit syrup to ferment for months, caused a massive explosion, and lost your entire security deposit. Wake up to reality.
Why must you bring up my deeply repressed trauma regarding the great syrup flood of my college days? My bank account still weeps at the memory of that spectacular screw-up. I'm taking massive critical damage here.
But honestly, looking at all of this, aren't we kind of doing the exact same thing online? Sitting here harshly judging someone's genuine passion and desperate choices just to make ourselves feel smarter on a podcast? For a second, I actually feel really bad for him.
A rare moment of deep self-reflection from the usually savage host. But don't worry, we're just performing a necessary reality check to keep the audience completely grounded. Now, let's wrap up this chaotic emotional roller coaster before the moderation bots flag us for excessive empathy.
Welcome to the Backroom. It is time to dive deep into the hidden secrets and behind-the-scenes gossip of Suho's white horse. I am honestly still recovering from that incredibly heavy emotional roller coaster we just went through. My heart cannot take much more of this. Neko, what kind of crazy historical contexts and wild conspiracy theories do you have for us today?
Fugo, prepare your mind, MC Shi, because the community will completely lose their minds over this hidden canon. The version of the story we all read is actually a highly calculated rewrite engineered by the author Yuzo Otsuka. In the original Mongolian folklore variations, the main villain was not some evil, overpowered dictator, but just a standard, moderately wealthy local resident. And the poor horse was not taken down by a dramatic rain of projectiles, but through a stealthy, toxic status effect applied out of petty jealousy. The original tale was just a messy, localized neighborhood feud over agricultural resources.
Wait, what in the world? Are you seriously telling me the textbook version was heavily edited and dramatized to manipulate our emotions? Why in the world would they change a simple local neighborhood dispute into a massive, terrifying battle against the government? That completely changes the entire meaning of the story.
It was a brilliant structural hack, optimized specifically for post-war educational algorithms. They urgently needed a clear, undeniable narrative of innocent citizens being unjustly crushed by absolute authority. Furthermore, the illustrator, who famously debuted at age 50, used thick, traditional Japanese paper and raw earth pigments to physically trap the harsh, dry reality of the plains into a two-dimensional format. It is a miraculously engineered piece of ideological software disguised as an innocent picture book. They effectively use extreme visual despair to teach us that challenging the system architecture results in absolute, unavoidable deletion.
I mean, that is undeniably impressive from an artistic and historical standpoint.
But it also sounds like they intentionally manufactured the most traumatizing visual experience possible just to teach little kids a harsh lesson about authority. They basically hard-coded pure fear into our vulnerable brains during elementary school. What other completely fabricated elements are hiding in this so-called classic story?
Historically accurate, but it completely ruins my beautiful headcanon. Let us examine the ultimate physical artifact of the story, the musical instrument itself. The emotional narrative claims it is made entirely from the beloved companion's remnants, but realistically, the actual historical instruments are almost entirely crafted from solid wood. Furthermore, in a harsh nomadic environment, horses are strictly utilitarian survival tools, not pampered indoor pets. The authors applied a massive romantic patch over a completely practical livestock economy to maximize the tragic aesthetic. The message boards will go totally crazy for this deep world building.
Hold on a second. You are telling me they heavily romanticized a standard agricultural asset to make us cry? And think about the ending for a minute. Suho basically takes his worst, most traumatic life event and turns it into a musical performance just to get constant validation from the village. That is a ridiculously toxic coping mechanism. You absolutely cannot just convert a massive personal disaster into a daily content farm to grind for sympathy points. Instead of getting a real job and rebuilding his life, he sits around playing sad music to get pity from his neighbors. That is just an excuse to avoid functioning like a proper adult in society.
Ah yes, Gigi. Your brutally realistic financial audits completely shatter the poetic illusion once again. But you have to admit, converting an irreversible loss into an endless stream of artistic output is the ultimate survival life hack. If you completely lose your most valuable asset to an unfair system, transforming that trauma into an infinite source of creative validation is the only way to avoid a total operational failure. It is a masterful way to monetize your own despair without breaking the terms of service.
I guess I understand the desperate need to survive a terrible situation when you have absolutely nothing left. But honestly, looking at them, aren't we kind of doing the exact same thing online? We sit here endlessly analyzing and harshly judging someone else's desperate tragedy just to package it into an entertaining podcast episode for absolute strangers to consume. Maybe we're all just trying to escape reality by turning our pain into content.
For a moment, even the noise stopped. At the end of the day, it is just the crushing loneliness of modernization, forcing us to commodify our pain just to feel a fleeting sense of connection. But hey, the algorithm demands continuous engagement, so we'll keep the content flowing. Meow.